couple of summers ago, I went golfing with my friend Olivia. We're not great golfers, but we're also not too bad. It was a Friday afternoon, and we went to this course close to where we live. It's not the greatest, and usually not very busy, but it doesn't cost very much, and it's still fun to play, so I usually go there at least 5 times a year. The course has many wooded areas on it and several hills as well. When we went golfing that day, things started out all right. I don't remember noticing anybody golfing immediately around us in front or behind. When we got to probably the 5th hole, it was one that had some woods along the left side of it. After our first hits, we were going over to the balls in our golf cart. I remember I was driving and I looked towards the tree line and noticed this guy standing there. He did not appear to be a golfer because he had no clubs or anything with him, and he was just kind of standing there and staring at us. It was kind of strange. I kept going, and we were driving closer to him. The spot where my ball landed was maybe 50 feet away from the guy. When we approached, and I had almost reached my ball, I saw the guy turn and then walk deeper into the woods. After that, we played the rest of the hole. When we got to maybe the 8th or 9th one, I saw the guy again. This time we were teeing off, and I noticed the guy standing just in front of a wooded area and watching us. When I looked over, I pointed him out to Olivia. We both thought that it was strange. After we hit and were driving our golf cart, the guy stayed there. He watched us play the entire hole, just staring at us the whole time. We both just ignored him. But he was back probably 15 or 20 minutes later at another hole. He was at a different spot, but once more near the edge of the woods. This was really weird now. He was just staring at us and watching us play. He stayed there for almost the entire time that we were at that hole. But eventually, he moved back into the woods and out of sight. Both Olivia and I had no idea really what was going on with him, but for the rest of the time we were golfing that day, we did not see him. When we were done, we stopped by the clubhouse and then left to go to my car in the parking lot. I had parked on the far side of the parking lot near the grass, and there was a bit of woods next to it. When we were walking out to my car, we saw the guy again. He was standing basically right next to my vehicle, a few steps out from the woods. We didn't want to go any farther, but we did. After making it about halfway there, the man didn't move. There wasn't another car over there that could have been his either. He was sort of looking over at us, and we decided not to go all the way to my car. We went back to the front of the parking lot near the clubhouse and could just barely see my vehicle from there. The guy did not move at first. There wasn't really anybody else around in the parking lot either. For several minutes, we weren't sure what to do. But finally, the man actually went into the woods at the side of the parking lot. When that happened, we decided to quickly go to my car. So we walked as fast as we could, and were worried that the guy would come out of the woods when we approached my car. But luckily, he did not. We then left and did not see him again. I'm not really sure who the guy was or what he was doing there, but it was really strange. I had something really bizarre happen last year when I went mini golf. I was at this outdoor course at night with some friends. The course is not too far from where I live, as well as most of the people in my friend group. I had been there several times over the years growing up. The mini golf course is part of a park that also has go-karts and batting cages. As far as the golf course, it's a pretty good one for mini golf, and is usually kind of busy. There are areas in the course with water and other sculptures and trees. So it was me and 3 other friends, and we started golfing at night. I'm not sure the exact time, but it was dark out, and the park had lights. So we were golfing for a while and got to one of the middle holes in the course. It was one that had a large water hazard. I made my putt and then I went near my ball, but I stood in this small spot next to a fence to get out of the way of my friends putting. The fence had a tree hanging over it from the other side. As I was watching my friends make their putts, suddenly I felt someone grab me from behind. I looked, and this random woman had grabbed both of my shoulders. She kind of pulled me back towards the fence. I had no idea what was going on. When I saw the woman, I didn't recognize her or anything. I pulled away from her suddenly, and when I did, she let go. I watched her quickly walk away and out of sight. She headed towards a sidewalk that was nearby. I went back over to my friends and asked them if they saw what just happened. Unfortunately, none of them had. The spot I was standing was kind of out of the way, and I was out of the way intentionally, but there was also a large tree branch somewhat obstructing, and they were also busy watching the putts. I told them about it, and then we moved on with golfing. By the end of the night, I forgot mostly all about the woman. So after golfing, my friends and I said bye to each other and then went our separate ways. I had met them there and was not going to be giving anybody a ride home. So I walked to my car in the parking lot, away from my friends. It was kind of a long and narrow parking lot, which had been busy when we got there but was now pretty quiet. Behind it was a little grass area and then a sidewalk in a residential neighborhood. When I was approaching my car, I saw this woman come out of the grass from the direction of the sidewalk. She was the same woman from earlier. When I saw her, I had a bad feeling about it. She looked at me, and when she got closer, she asked if she could get a ride home. I was thinking that she must be crazy. Obviously, I had no idea who she was. Why would I give her a ride home? It surprised me, and I didn't know how to respond, so eventually I just said no. But this did not make her go away. She continued to walk next to me. I thought about asking her why she had grabbed me earlier at the golf course, but I decided to just not say anything and try to get away from her. When I reached my car, though, she was still walking just a few feet behind me. I told her goodbye to signal to her to get away from me. She actually said goodbye back to me, which made me feel a little bit better. She started to walk around to the back of my car, and I figured that she was leaving. I unlocked my car and got into the driver's seat, but just moments later, the passenger's door opened up and the woman got inside. I was shocked. I asked her what she was doing, and she said that she really needed a ride home. I told her to get out of my car or I was going to call the police. She did not leave though. When I got my phone, she suddenly reached over and tried grabbing it from me. When she did this, my reaction was to leave the car. I pulled away from her and left. Luckily, she did not take my phone and I still had it. I also had not started the engine yet and I still had my keys in hand as well. So the woman was still in my car for a moment, but then she left and started following me again. I walked back towards the other side of the parking lot and she was trying to catch up to me. I really had no idea why she was following me of all people. I did not know this woman. When I made it a good distance away and she was still there, I was going to go back inside the park, but then I had the idea to just run for it. I turned and just bolted from my car. I sprinted the entire way and was confident that I could outrun the woman, and luckily I was able to. I got to my car, went inside, locked the door, and quickly backed out. She reached my car after I had backed up and was about to put it into drive. She then banged on the side of my door once, but I peeled out. I still don't know who she was. I have no idea why she kept following me around, but I'm glad that I got away from her. I live right next to a golf course. My property is one that borders it, and my neighborhood is generally pretty quiet. Most people have about an acre or two of land, and there's a good amount of wildlife in the area as well. It's a nice place to live, but the biggest incident I've had since living here took place earlier this year. To describe my property, I have about an average-sized front yard, and then my house. The backyard is a little bit larger, and on the back side of it for a stretch, it connects to the golf course. It's the 12th hole of the course, and about midway through that hole, there's about 20 feet of woods that separates my yard from the course. Occasionally, I get golf balls landing in my yard, but luckily none of them have ever hit my house. You would have to be really, really bad for that to happen, or else you would have to be purposely aiming for the house. Most of the balls just get stuck in the woods, and they rarely even make it out to the open part of my backyard. But one night, I noticed out the back window into the yard that there was a golf ball kind of near the house. This was really strange because I had never seen a ball land in that part of the yard before. Like I said, none had barely made it past the woods. This would happen because the balls would be sure to get caught up in a tree branch or bush or something before it made it to the clear part of the yard. It was so strange that I decided to go outside and get the ball. so I left my house and walked out into the backyard. I picked up the golf ball and looked around, wondering how and when it got there. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and I hadn't noticed the ball in the yard earlier, so I started to walk into the woods and see if there were any more balls, and there were. I found 2 more in the woods on the way to the golf course. I reached the course and I looked around. Obviously, it was completely empty and dark out. Things were very quiet. I then turned around and started walking back through the woods towards my house. When I was almost out of the woods, though, I heard a sound behind me. I turned and saw a golf ball falling to the ground after hitting a tree. This was very strange. Obviously, the golf course was closed and nobody was out golfing right now. But somebody was here. I kept going and made it to my yard, but then I heard a loud noise from the woods, as if somebody had entered it. I thought maybe somebody had been walking around the golf course and was just messing around and tossed a ball into the woods. But now this person was entering the woods and headed towards my house, it seemed. I stood in the yard watching the woods. I couldn't see much because it was very dark, but then I suddenly saw a golf ball come flying towards me. It did not hit me, but actually came really close. It ended up hitting a bush next to my house. I realized that someone had thrown it at me, and they must be just inside of the woods. I called out asking who was there, but instead of getting a response, another golf ball came whizzing towards me. I moved back to my house to get out of the way. I just barely saw a guy emerge from the woods for a second and fire another ball in my direction. The ball ended up hitting my house. Luckily, it didn't break anything though. So I went inside, locked the back door, and then I called the police. I looked out of a window, and the man was back in the woods now. After that, he did not return. The police came out and looked around, but the guy had gone back to wherever he had come from. When the police left, I just hoped that he wouldn't be back. Nothing strange happened for the rest of the night to my knowledge, but the next day, there were several more new golf balls in my backyard. Luckily, nothing was broken. Since then, though, I've not had any more incidents, and I'm hoping that I never do. I had a wild experience golfing a couple years ago with my friend. We went to this golf course close by, and I would say that it's pretty average. I remember that we scheduled it sort of last minute, and the course was not that busy. We intentionally got a tee time that we could see there was nobody directly in front or behind us, because all the time slots were available for like an hour and a half, so we got one right in the middle. And this was nice, because I always hate when you're golfing and there's somebody faster behind you and then you feel rushed because they're waiting. I also don't like having to wait on other people. My friend and I are not particularly fast or slow, but it's just more enjoyable to not worry about those things. So we arrived for our tee time and then got to the first hole. We then teed off and began playing. Well, by the time we were on the third hole, I noticed there was somebody behind us. It was a man who appeared to be playing by himself. As soon as I saw him, I felt unhappy. He must have really scheduled right before the tee time, because every time slot behind us had been open earlier. Still, it wasn't that big of a deal, and we just kept golfing. However, the guy behind us was going really fast. I remember after we hit our drives on the fourth hole, the guy already parked his golf cart right next to ours. When we got inside the cart to go get our balls, he made a comment saying, "I hope I'm not going to be having to wait for you guys all day." I offered him to go in front of us, but he said no. So my friend said we would try to be fast. And we're not the best golfers in the world, but we're not that bad either. We were not out there just messing around and taking forever. We were trying to be serious golfers. So we went and finished the hole and then moved on. We actually picked up our pace to stay ahead of the guy, but the man stayed right on us the entire time. He continued to make comments too. He yelled at us to hurry up about 2 or 3 times and was also criticizing our golfing. I remember that he said that my swing was terrible. We then ended up catching up with a group of people golfing ahead of us. So now we were stuck between waiting for people and having somebody wait for us, which is specifically what I was trying to avoid. I remember the guy said a few more comments. I was just ignoring him though. Then things reached a boiling point on hole 10. By that point, my friend and I were mad at the guy behind us, and apparently he was also mad at us. We teed off and then drove our carts to the fairway to begin our second strokes. Before we even hit our balls for a second time though, the man behind us teed off. His ball ended up nearly hitting us. You're not supposed to tee off when there's people in the middle of the course. Obviously it can be dangerous. We stopped, and when the man walked over to us to get his ball, we started yelling at him for nearly hitting us. We asked him why he didn't wait until we were at least out of the way. The man seemed even more angry though and said that it was our fault. He said we were taking forever and we didn't know how to golf. We ended up making him go in front of us at that point. And finally he actually did. There was nobody in sight behind the man, so after my friend and I let him go, we played the 10th hole like 3 times. We stayed there long enough that we were sure the guy would be long gone. Then we were able to play the rest of the course without any problems. I really wish we would have made the guy go in front of us sooner. We had offered twice, but he said no both times. So after being done, when we got back to my car in the parking lot, there were all these dents in the side. It was unbelievable, like somebody had taken a golf club to it a bunch of times. And we were sure who had done it too. It had to be that guy. We went inside the clubhouse and reported it. I also called the police, but unfortunately, the golf course had no cameras in the parking lot, so we couldn't prove it. I haven't been back there since. I live with my wife in a pretty typical neighborhood. We have a little bit larger backyard. It has kind of a hill slanted downwards, and it also is at a bit of an angle. It's nothing crazy as far as size goes, but there's a few random trees scattered around and some bushes, as well as some open space. At the back side of the yard, I have a large net where I practice golfing. I would go out there some nights and work on my swing because I love to golf in my free time. So one night, I went out after dark to practice some swings. I was going to be golfing the next day with one of my buddies. Unfortunately, I hadn't had a chance to practice much that week and had been busy at work. So I went out a little late to get a feel for my swing. My wife stayed inside, and I got a bucket of balls and headed to the back. It was a bit of a walk to the back side of the yard where my net was. So I got out there and began practicing. Our yard was big enough that I never worried about bothering a neighbor or something. Our backyard had a pretty private feel to it and had a tall fence over most of it. So about 15 minutes into hitting, I heard this noise. I looked over and saw this random guy literally walking in our yard. He was maybe 50 feet away from me. I had no idea who the guy was or where he had come from. I did not get a good look at him in the dark with him being that far away as well. He also wasn't looking at me. I wasn't sure if he had seen me, but I figured he had to know I was back here with me actively hitting golf balls. He walked sort of quickly and was going up towards my house. From where I was, you couldn't fully see the house. I knew that the back door was left unlocked though from me being out here, and I realized that might be where the man was headed. So I quickly started running up towards the house. I kept my golf club in hand to use as a potential weapon if I had to. I ran up a different route that the man was going. He was more off to the side of the yard, and probably did that intentionally to stay hidden better, because there were many more trees and bushes obstructing the view from that side. I was able to make it up to the house before him, and I quickly got inside. I then closed and locked the back door. Then I let out a sigh of relief. But moments later, the man tried opening the door. I went over and told my wife about it. We then went to a window and looked out the back, and saw the man still there. We called the police, but he ran off, going out of sight before they got there. The police looked around the yard, but came up empty. The man had gotten away. It was really unusual for something like that to happen in our neighborhood though. I still don't know who he was or what he was doing. I'm glad nothing like that has happened since.